All right, Weather Wise Guys back. Second episode of 2026, and look who we brought back. Another wiser guy than Wesserai. What's up?
Hey guys, good to see you. Happy New Year. I know it's kind of late, but Happy New Year.
It fits. I mean, we're saying Happy New Year, Merry Christmas well into, into January. We just put our Christmas up this past weekend, so,
Hey, Evan, I like your bold Evan Chick Vera in all caps on your screen there.
I keep my stuff on all caps because I'm typing teases and stuff for the producers, and I guess it just seems super loud. So
I like it.
Thank you. This is Evan Chick Bear, and I'm yelling at you through the screen.
There you go. It's much calmer, friendlier weatherman Evan Chick Bear now.
Yeah. Hey, there's our icon for this week. There he is.
Snowman.
Winter weather whisperer, man. I tell you, it was fun last week going back and forth with David about the forecast because it's so snow in the south. It's just so bizarre, particularly this setup over the Gulf that once again landed and then, the setup last year. So we'll certainly be talking about that.
Yeah, amazing to see snow 2 years in a row.
Incredible.
And this snow was not as impressive as last year, of course, but still to see accumulating snow. It had been so long. So yeah, I was like a little kid again playing out there. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it looked awesome. Now we got this other freaking system coming through here that's got everybody in my side of the state, all over the place, myself included with some whiplash here, just trying to take kind of the middle ground. And Wes, you're at the very, very top of this winter storm watch. So
I know.
Tell us your setup first, and then we'll try to diagnose what the heck's going to happen this weekend.
Well, at the time that we're recording this on Wednesday evening, my only half of my DMA is in a winter storm watch. If you're watching this 12 hours later, probably the rest of my DMA will be in a winter storm watch. Just because, the last 24 hours is a pretty good northerly shift, and high ensembles shifted north as well, but general high resolution output also shifted off to the north. So when we're looking at several inches of snow and pure snow here, I think a lot of people locally are hearing about what's happening south of us, about being a bunch of ice, and they're low-key worried there's going to be ice along with this. But it is simply snow, and it'll be snowing most of the time when the temperature is between around 15 and 0 degrees. So very fluffy, efficient snow, and the wind chill will be between 0 and -20 throughout the weekend as well. So it's purely all snowfall for us, and we're getting moisture, a crazy amount of moisture from the Pacific and from the Gulf, where you really very rarely see a profile of a completely saturated atmosphere while it's snowing. It's something you usually see whenever it's raining on top of you. It's very puzzling.
Yeah, I would say puzzling is a good way to put where I'm at. Watching things back and forth. The Euro is what I typically rely on when it comes to winter weather, but I still look at everything else to kind of get a consensus, see the overlap here. And over the last about 24 to 36 hours, the Euro has completely shifted, a good, 50, 150 miles further north, this warm boundary that they're going to bring in. So basically, it's taking the track of that low on the Gulf, and I think it's taking it further north, which is pushing up, warmer air mass in, which right now would yield what you're seeing there, the accumulation of ice to basically nothing for us. Previous runs, well, they had us at about a half to about 6/10 of an inch of ice, which doesn't sound like a ton, but is an absolutely devastating scenario for infrastructure, power, everything else. And trying to kind of weed through that. You got people who, have church this weekend, events over the weekend. There's a lot of places here that just are not equipped to deal with this. Most places are not equipped to deal with this. So finding a fine line to communicate this without, hyperbole has been very, very tough to do. Graphics can be very loud and words can be very quiet when you put stuff out. So right now I kind of favor the warm sector with the kind of caveat, and David, you probably know about this being down in southeast Alabama, a cool air wedge. Do we see a cool air damming scenario that comes in and overlaps with this moisture and this colder air and enhances wintry precip? To that, I don't know. Some of the models are trying to bring that in here, but the depth of which still working that out. So interesting weekend for North Alabama.
Couple notes. Wes, you're lucky in a way because it's all snow. It's really easy to forecast the precipitation type. The amounts will be a challenge. And from all my years working in the Midwest, when I was a younger guy, it seems like a lot of the times the models would shift north with the snow. When I was working in Iowa or in the Quad Cities in Northwest Illinois, you would see snow come up into Missouri in the modeling, and then at the end of the day, when it actually snowed, it was way up into parts of Wisconsin. So, not a big surprise, I guess, to see the models even today shift a little bit northward as we go through time. But I think we're seeing this trough out west and the evolution of it, kind of difficult for the models to determine what's going to happen exactly. And Evan, to your point, if you look at that low-level jet in the European model, there's a screaming low-level jet through Alabama as we get through Saturday night and then into Sunday, which kind of helps push that warm air really far to the north. And maybe the Euro is on to the fact that this trough digs a little bit more initially, and then when it kicks out, it drives that low-level jet through Alabama and keeps you warm. But I don't envy you, because that part of the state, Birmingham to Huntsville, I mean, wow, just a tremendous difference in impacts. If you're in that cold sector or in that warm sector, it's going to be a night and day difference.
Yeah, and question, you mentioned the low-level jet, which, I'm learning is much more part of the forecast than just severe weather. That would work against the wedging, regardless of if it sets up, right? You've got good west-southwesterly flow from the surface to, 800, 700 millibars, and that would, I would think, kind of counter the wedge, whatever of which is trying to set up.
Yeah, it would scour it out a little bit quicker. So I've been watching, because my daughter is due to fly back into Atlanta Saturday afternoon from DC. So I've been kind of watching the DC area and then watching Atlanta to see if she could get in Saturday afternoon. I had her move her flight up to Saturday morning just in case. But it looks like that cold air will come in, that cold air damming down the Appalachians, the east side, and then that low-level jet kind of comes in and meets it, and then it kind of pushes it back out. So that forecast for, say, North Georgia, even up into far southwestern parts of North Carolina, and then into Tennessee, very difficult, because that cold air comes in. There could be a period of some freezing rain or even some sleet, and then it changes over to rain, and then may end as rain because that warm air floods in from the southwest. So I think that low-level jet and that push of southwesterly winds, both up above at 4,000, 5,000 feet down to the surface, will push out that cold air that initially comes in.
I don't really, from an outsider's perspective here, looking down at the folks in the Southeast, outside of Mississippi and Memphis and Arkansas and Louisiana, I don't really get that there is a whole lot of panic going on in Alabama, or really even in Atlanta. My ear's a little closer to the ground in Atlanta, but, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of panic in those states.
I think it has to do with the early runs. So if you go back to, and I worked over the weekend, I'm in the midst of quite a marathon here because, people vacation and whatnot. But back to the weekend, this is the GFS, and the even earlier runs of the Euro brought snow all the way down to just about Birmingham. But one thing that's been consistent, David, if you've looked at this, is the warm nose. At 850, about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, every run since this weekend has had temperatures above freezing, which means whatever comes through that column is likely to melt. What's changed, most notably, is the surface temperatures. So,
but the AI Euro, on that note, the AI Euro a couple days ago was onto that before the deterministic physics-based models. Did you notice that?
No, because I watched the AI Euro for your snow event that we're about to get to, and it never was in the ballpark. It wasn't even in the same county.
Yeah, you're right.
So I
until the end,
a whole lot of look.
Came through in the end.
Very end, it decided, no, here we go. So I think that's where it comes from, Wes, is depending on what you look at, what's shared. And I've had to be careful about the models or what I share and what I type to kind of control that freak out. I just redid a graphic and reposted it because the color table is scary. And I changed it to purples and pinks and whites because people see it and it's loud and it's scary and the messaging can be thrown. So, the South, we don't do well with snow, especially ice. You throw in some scary graphics and some way too early forecasts, and that can cause it to go into a tizzy. So that's all I got with that.
So how big is the concern for ice in Birmingham and in Atlanta?
Birmingham and Atlanta is much lesser so than it was just 36 hours ago. Last night at 10, I kind of denounced the idea, but knowing that it had only been a couple runs, and Now seeing it today, I mean, they bring 50 degrees in here Saturday afternoon. That
Oh,
the Euro does. GFS is closer to upper 30s, low 40s, but it's showing definitively over multiple data sets that it's going to be warm enough to not. And something too, David, and you feel free to kind of tweak me on this, but if it rains beforehand, stands to reason, we're 40 degrees and raining. The ground is wet with 40 degrees and rain. It's going to take longer for that temperature to drop and anything that comes later to freeze on contact or that flash freeze to happen if we've got warmer air already in place when the event starts, right?
Yeah, really. And that's something that a lot of people, just the general public, has a hard time understanding. And I was talking about this with my meteorologist, Ryan, yesterday. A lot of people think that when it hits 32, all of a sudden everything instantly freezes in the landscape. And that's just not the way it works, because objects, the ground in particular, holds heat very, very well. So if you're 40 degrees in rain, that ground is 40 degrees. Even down deeper, it's warmer. So as you worst case, bring down that air temperature down to 32 or 30, it takes hours for that ground to get to the point where it's 32 and can support freezing rain. So it really, if you look at freezing rain events, unless you have a prolonged period of 33, 32, and then it touches 32, you're not going to see that accumulation until you have really cold air, 28, 29, 30, or a long duration cold period before the rain begins and that temperature, gets down to 32. That's, I think, a big challenge. And you're right, Evan. I mean, to your point, yeah, if you're 40 before that event comes in, you're not going to see accumulation of any ice until you get a prolonged period of cold. And with that warm air coming in, maybe it doesn't happen for Birmingham or even Huntsville.
Yeah. So at this point in the forecast, basically my biggest concern is from Sunday night to Monday morning, the moisture that's left, when we sharply drop to 19 degrees, what does that do for bridges, overpasses, and less traveled thoroughfares? So that's kind of where I've left it. And I'm sure
the flip side. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's just kind of where I'm at here on a Wednesday night with a couple days out. So a lot of uncertainty still.
Yeah. Now the flip side of that cold, dry air coming in is if you have, let's say everything is completely wet and it's 40 degrees and you drop to 20 degrees in an hour, it's probably going to evaporate that moisture before it freezes, because that cold air is really, really dry air. And if you've got wet pavement and dry air, I mean, that will dry up within 5-10 minutes. So to have a flash freeze really cause impacts, you're talking about areas with ponding of water on the roadways, or where you've got roads that kind of seep up, groundwater seeps up into the pavement, where it keeps replenishing the moisture as that temperature drops and it evaporates and it freezes. But I think there's a lot of exaggeration about, flash freeze and everything's going to be frozen like you see in the movies, because that cold air is so dry. Usually there's a very quick evaporative process that happens before it has a chance to freeze. It just evaporates when it's still a liquid.
Yeah, that's another good point. Again, another little variable that you kind of have to throw in there. And that's why it's hard to message this, is because you get so much time on air and to talk about all of this. And then, even on social posts, you'll type it out and throw these in, but they don't necessarily read past the image of the graphic. So that's been kind of my messaging issue I'm still working with. But any other thoughts there, Wesley?
What have you been telling your brother? Because I told your brother you're effed.
I said
essentially,
Memphis is screwed if he's going up there, but Memphis is now at the very southern edge of that, at least the European track for snow, and right smack dab in the ice track, which I still think is not good. Even the most northerly extent of this has them in ice versus very heavy snow.
Yeah, I know Starkville is in that as well. My buddy that lives in the Delta of Mississippi, I told him a couple of days ago now, and what was it? Maybe Monday-ish. I was like, hey, you should probably just go and try to find a generator. And you need to just act like you are on a desert island for 2 days. Because if there is legitimately a half an inch of ice that falls in the Delta of Mississippi, and it doesn't get above freezing for a couple of days afterward, I can't explain to you how screwed you and your community truly are.
February 9th to 13th, 1994, that ice storm, they had power lines that had 6 inches of ice. It was like the high power transmission lines, but it was actually 12 inches because it was 6 inches around the wire. So yeah, that event was the last time we saw something like what could unfold coming up there. That part of the Delta and then into Arkansas. I mean, that area is just, no matter what happens, the tweaks that are happening in Alabama, where it goes from cold to warm, in that northern part of Mississippi into Arkansas. I mean, it's going to be cold. It's going to be ice, pretty much, no doubt about it. And then heavy snow north of there. And yeah, you look back at that storm in '94, and it was crippling. I mean, just so many trees down, power out for weeks. It was just horrible.
Ice is not good for anybody.
Oh,
I try to tell people that. They're like, "Oh, no school." I said, "No power.
No power." Right.
No, nothing.
So, all right. So last week, this was fun. I'm going to pop this up. And David, if you have anything, feel free to screen share it. But this is a look at the snow totals I just grabbed. 24 hour from our product, but little fun out there. You were a child again, right, David? Some snow coming through.
It was fun. Yeah, we had probably just under an inch at my place in Dothan. And those totals overall, I think Enterprise officially was 0.4 inches. So that auto plot may be a little high. But
it's an estimate. So this is just kind of a general range.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, that kind of shows where it fell. And it was fun. It was neat because you could see Saturday that everything was lining up, that this was going to happen. And then I put out some posts about the fact that you're going to see these massive dendrites falling, these big snowflakes when that transition occurs. And Wes, up there, you go from rain to snow. At the onset of that snow, you get these just massive flakes. And that's exactly what happened. And it was like being in a snow globe. And because it was such a wet snow, and it occurred in that 6 to 8 a.m. window when temperatures were cold, 33, 34, it stuck to everything. Every tiny, pine needle had snow accumulating on it. So it was just frosted everywhere in the landscape. And to see that in far southeast Alabama was like, wow, this is amazing. You would swear some of those pictures that came out of Alabama were from somewhere in Michigan with all the pines covered in snow. And it was beautiful. That 2 hour window or 3 hour window after the snow stopped, because by 8 o'clock it was winding down, then by noon it was gone. But you wish you could have frozen time when that snow's coming down and it's not windy and it's peaceful and you're soaking it up. You just don't have enough time to soak it all in, because it's just one of those moments in life where it's just, you're in awe of what was happening around you. Fascinating.
It's that good snowman making snow.
Oh, it was great.
Nice and wet, very malleable.
Yep. I still have some in my yard, actually, from my snowman. It's still out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that cold down there still? You still have snow in your yard?
Yeah, a little bit. Just where I had, that, I think it was about this big. My lower, it was a small snowman. But yeah, we had nights in the 20s that followed, so it stuck around. Today we were lower 60s, so it's melting. But there's still some out there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures that the viewers sent, David, because I still talk to some people down there. Was just these big, flakes, and these videos are just like, how could you? I mean, if you told me that was somewhere in Kansas, Kansas City, I'd have believed it.
Yeah.
This church in Dothan, the Methodist church, it's right there on Main Street. I mean, gorgeous facade, and then you have these massive flakes just gently floating to the ground. It was beautiful.
In 2012, I think it was 2012, my wife and I, as part of a trip, went up to Banff, Canada, up in the Rockies, and then we took a day trip to Lake Louise, and beautiful Lake Louise. Anyone who's been there, these bluffs and then the lake. But for about a 5 or 10 minute window when we were in Lake Louise, it was snowing like that. I mean, massive snowflakes, and it was even heavier than what we saw here on Sunday. Total snow globe. But what happened here Sunday took me back to what happened in Canada back in 2012. It's just such a rare event to see that kind of snow. And even me growing up in the snow, I can't recall, any events quite like what we saw here Sunday, that period of really big, heavy, wet snowflakes and the tranquility. And maybe because where I live, I've got trees on two sides of my house, and you could really see the contrast of the dark landscape and the flakes falling. But it was just it was beautiful.
So go ahead, Wes.
Did it really snow again in the Panhandle?
Yeah. Yep.
Snow on the beach again?
Yep. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I would love to experience that. Like I've kind of experienced the Northern Lights a little bit here the last year. Nothing like walk out of your cabin and the snow is glowing green kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I would love to experience that type of aurora and then being on the beach while it's snowing.
Might be the apocalypse if we see that.
all at the same time.
You never know. Never say never. I've learned that. Never say never.
Wes, before we get into some of the modeling and, David kind of talking us through all that, is there a model bias for you? I know depending on how things initiate the parameters and whatnot, certain ones, you take, yes, you can put more stock in versus no. When you're forecasting snow there, what is, kind of your, I guess, process, and what do you look at most heavily if there is something?
If the GFS is wildly different from the European, the Canadian, either of those two ensembles, then it's probably missing something. It's probably doing something wrong. So I generally will pretty heavily discount any GFS solution that is just totally different. Like there might be a little bit of truth to it. Like yes, it could be onto something minor, but it's probably also just missing something in general. When you get to the end of like a 12-kilometer NAM or even a 3-kilometer NAM run, it's probably doing something a little bit too wonky, and you can't take it too seriously. So those are really the only ones that I buy into overall. But my process, what I've really always done leading up to snowfall events is we look at ensembles. First figure out what the temperatures are going to be, and like, all right, is it 10-1? Then I can use 10-1 products. And 10-1 is snow to liquid ratio. But with this event, I can't use 10-1. And so I'm essentially just looking at how much moisture, how much precipitation can I get? And I'm like, all right, this event, it's 15-1 or 20-1. And so I'm just looking to see how my ensemble means of precipitation are lining up, and then just sort of go from there. At this point, now that we're like 3 days out, I can believe a little bit more than what the NAM is telling me and what the GFS and European and Canadian are legitimately putting out, because they're all sort of on the same page now. And I think that's a pretty general practice that most meteorologists do.
I'd agree with that.
What I have here is just a couple. I know we were talking back and forth, and I saved a couple things, including this really cool image you had me look up about the divergence was going to be in place and how you thought it could play a role, because models were all over the place. But what did you see as the week kind of unfolded and how things performed?
Yeah, I think the upper air pattern was pretty well resolved. There was a shift, and these trend graphics are a really good forecasting tool because you can kind of see how the models are changing in time. And the models were shifting a little bit farther to the west with the trough axis, which meant the warmer air was shifting a little bit farther to the west. But at the same time, as you got closer to the event, you started seeing the colder air in the lower to middle levels of the atmosphere, kind of kicking to the northeast. So you had this warmer air coming in down below, especially from the southeast, but then you had this push of colder air up above. And so it became a question of timing. Would that colder air aloft come in time to match that precip and then allow heavy snow to fall down through the column and basically erode what little warm layer was left, which is what ended up happening. The divergence was good to provide the uplift. We knew precipitation was going to occur. It was the question mark about the strength of the cold air and if it would make it in. And then you had just so many model differences, and it's really kind of frustrating, for all of us in the weather game, that there is no go-to model, and there's no consensus from 3-4 days out from an event. Like right now, looking towards this week, last week you didn't have consensus between, you started getting, for example, the RRFS at 84 hours, you started getting that data in, then you have the 3K NAM, then you have all the traditional global models, and then you have the AI models and the ensembles, and there was no consensus on this is where it's going to set up. The snow line is going to be here. It's going to transition here. The amounts are going to be here. Then you have like what the Baron uses, what the weather company uses for their models, and that's different too. It just makes forecasting really difficult. It makes the messaging really difficult because there's so much information out there. And I think at some point we'll have better modeling, but sometimes I look around, I'm like, we're in 2026. Why isn't it better than it is? It's not easy. Like you see it in the last 24 hours. Evan, you go back to Tuesday morning, you look at that model data for Birmingham, and some of the models cranking out over an inch of ice, and then to think 36 hours later, you could be in the 50s and rain and no ice anywhere around you. Like, how did that happen? As you got closer to the event, it just changes that much? I mean, come on.
Yeah, and then Wes and I to the messaging part. You got these crazy people, which our last episode depicted of the misinformation. Is they're grabbing a model run. It's throwing something at a dartboard blind, and sometimes it pans out, and then you've got us kind of trying to analyze this, going back and forth. Maybe 1 in 50 those other people's will pan out, but it gets enough traction where they'll be like, oh. There's no reason for a meteorologist or a forecaster because all they're doing is looking at this. But I got to tell you, I've looked at more model data the last week or so between these two weather systems, these winter systems, than I have in quite a long time. And you're right, the inconsistency is what makes it hard. And honestly, at some point, you kind of have to, you pick one, you go with your gut a little bit. And I saw enough from the Euro last week that was kind of dodging all around that general area. You can see that's the 10-kilometer Euro that was on Wednesday, the 15th, or it was on the 15th, whatever day that was, those runs. So it was very close to what actually happened. And then the NAM did not switch over until very shortly before. Same with the HER. Yep. I did not see any wintry stuff until very close to it. Not just with the duration they go out, 24, 36, 48 hours, but it was very late in the game. And it is tough to message amongst all the other nonsense.
And the HER was awful. The HER wasn't even showing any precip for a while in southeast Alabama, and then the graph model from the weather company was all southeast as well with the precip on Friday. And then you have some models that had snow for sure in southeast Alabama. So you had a 50-50 split more or less on where that snow would set up and how much would fall. And sometimes when I forecast, I feel like I can look at 20 different models and I don't really agree with any of them. And I wish there was a way to kind of create your own blend. Like I want this precip, I want this temperature profile from this model. And maybe that's, maybe we're onto something here where you could, pick and choose. Exactly. What model variables you want and then create your own model based on the information that's out there. Because sometimes it really is just blending all the information to come up with what's going to be almost reality, but trying to do that and share that with people is really difficult.
And the blend, like the super blend, the NWS blend, it tries to do that, but it's weighted to the GFS, and the GFS is doing some walking, and it throws a whole blend. You're like, I can't look at this. Like, this is not useful at all. And then, like, the WPC's forecast, I could go on a rant about this, but it's really annoying how if you have one just super wonky model, it throws up your whole blend. Like, can you just get rid of this for like just one run, and then let's just see what happens.
I agree.
So
it's a challenge. At the end of the day, it's a challenge. Every single weather event's a challenge, and it's the same thing when you look at hurricane forecasting or severe weather forecasting. You've got these different solutions, and usually the actual future atmosphere is a blend of the different models that are out there. And that's where hopefully our knowledge comes out in what we write and say online and on air to kind of bring some clarity, because just one single model run, one snapshot in time doesn't tell the story.
For what it's worth, with the comments that we had on Facebook, both me and you were, we got it right. So whatever we were sharing and posting as it evolved, which I feel like we did, pivot as it went closer, gave the uncertainty leading up to and then pivot. And people were like, hey, you guys got it. And I was like, yay.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, the right way to do it, because you take in all the information, and yes, there's a chance. It's a low chance right now. And then as you get closer to it, you keep analyzing and digesting the data, and then you adjust it up and you show your confidence. And I think people appreciate that, instead of going all out like it's not going to happen, no way it happens, or it's absolutely going to happen. I think you got to humble yourself sometimes in this profession.
I don't have a problem telling people that I don't know everything. I have a graphic I've been using before. Every forecast says what we know, what we don't.
Yeah.
And I told my news director, I said, this is just honest. You want to talk transparency? This is transparent. I don't know this, this, and this. I know this, this, and this. So today's list, there was a lot more uncertainty than certainty. But you mentioned tropical, David. Hard turn here, but we've been trying to do this tropical thing, and we're going to fit it in here because I am excited to talk about this. And honestly, this was a fun thing to forecast too. We did this, last year. What was it, in June, maybe in May? We looked at all the forecasts from all these different entities, which we agreed there's a ton. Everybody's got their own forecast. Some people really wide range, some narrow, and then we kind of debated: are these useful? Are these beneficial? Because you have these wild ranges. It's well in advance. It doesn't say where they're going to make landfall. You can go, the ACE index, the accumulative cyclone energy, and maybe point towards, hey, it's going to be more or less active. But by and large, what does this tell us? And we made our predictions, which was also fun. Y'all remember these?
Yeah.
So
I know I was wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
quite the contrary,
Yeah,
Wes.
you're right there.
No way.
Yeah.
13, 5, and 4.
So go
Wes.
back. Go back.
I
Okay.
won this? Are you serious?
Yeah, so look, I mean, all three of us, you look at those numbers that were coming out, and they were crazy high, 17, 18, 19, and then, go back to us and then Wes. Yeah, all three of those forecasts are really good forecasts.
I agree. And I look back at this and I thought, honestly, this was good. And I know that we talked about this and how aggressive a lot of these were being. And Phil Klotzbach in Colorado State, which I believe he's kind of speaks for that forecast. He's phenomenal, one of the best tropical people, but we didn't get close. And honestly, David, during the season we vented, there was a couple that should never have been named.
Andrea.
Should not have been named and was just junk. So I would almost call it 12 named storms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but Wes, what the heck, dude?
How did I win?
You're
Bro, that
furthest
isn't.
away from the
Hey,
coast.
y'all want to start your own forecasting company? This is ridiculous. I did this I was so non-serious with this forecast. I mean, I put a little bit of effort into it, but oh my god, I think it's luck. That is more luck than skill on that one. That's hilarious. Oh
I'm
my
on the
god.
same boat, but does that kind of show the point? Like these tropical forecasts go out, and it's like, okay,
Right.
it's above average season, but what does it what does this tell us? And I don't think it was the most informative. This is a look at all the tracks.
Like the college football preseason poll. How did that pan out?
That's what we should have as a kind of a parallel to this.
Yeah, all those storms. So Andrea was the very first one. It was a little swirl up in the North Atlantic, and I mean a little swirl that had a little convection briefly that went away, and then after it went away, they suddenly named it a tropical storm, which, so I had an asterisk by that the whole season. I mean, that should not have been named. Barry down there in the southwestern Gulf, barely. It was barely a storm. Barry was barely a storm. The other ones, there were some big ones out there, but Andrea in particular, that maybe in hindsight they take it away. I don't know.
They wouldn't have ever even known this existed years ago,
right?
Let alone put a name on it. So this skews data, in my opinion. So
what was the other one out there? Was it Lorenzo or?
Honestly, I think it would have been
one of those out there.
Was it Jerry?
Maybe it was Jerry. That was also trash.
Or Lorenzo. Both of those were in the middle of nowhere. And,
What about 11 and 12 are look dumb?
Yeah, those. Yeah, I think one of those two was it Karen, Lorenzo, Jerry. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, Karen. It has a label of SS, not even tropical storm. So as far as the diagnosis here, they called that a subtropical storm. So that got a name as a subtropical storm, and that was back in October. Actually, that was October 10th. So on the near anniversary of Michael, you've got this joke of a system that got a name. But so Wes, how did you do this, man?
Can you go back so I can screenshot it and then talk trash to people?
Yeah. Is your crown big enough? I wasn't sure that was getting the point across.
No, it's good. This is great. This is great. I'm gonna go talk trash to my former boss, who I think I out forecasted. So this is great. I don't even know. What really the biggest thing that I took into account was the fact that we were recording this in June and there had been nothing. I was like, okay. I know we can make up the ground, but like this is very quiet start to the season, and that was the biggest takeaway overall.
My thinking after I looked at this, and David, I talked with you some, was this. It points to one of the issues I have in the overall tropical forecasting, and not one that I have a solution for because, again, I don't know. But we know certain things like, what oscillation we're shifting into, what sort of pattern. You can look at the NAO, you can look at, the ENSO circulations, and we've tied that towards active or inactive seasons. But something we don't know, where is that Bermuda high going to set up? And to me, that was key to this season entirely, and you can see that by the tracks of these storms. That Bermuda high is 150 miles west. All of those tracks graze the Carolinas, graze the southeast. They're pushed, but every one that formed, you saw it. It went, and then it got slung around that high on the western side. And yeah, they were strong. There was plenty of energy available. Wind shear wasn't too bad, but every one of them, followed the path of where that high set up. And you just don't know where that's going to be at the beginning of the season.
Well, we had that persistent trough, too, coming on through the eastern part of the country. The first 4 months, I swear, of the season, just a persistent trough. And you see it right now. It's the same pattern that's in place right now, this big low basically over Hudson Bay or the southeast part of Canada, and a big trough over the eastern part of the country. And that was pushing those storms out to sea around that Bermuda high. It was all linked together, that Bermuda high out there, trough over the eastern seaboard. And the pathway for these storms was between that high and between that trough. And it was right up there over the western part of the Atlantic towards Bermuda, then out to sea. And you look at that long wave pattern right now, that cold Arctic air coming into the eastern U.S. is pretty much that same pattern that's been locked in place going back to June of last year, with some exceptions. But you look at, Texas winter temperatures hasn't been that cold. It's been cold over parts of Florida than it has in Texas because of that persistent trough over the East Coast. It's really interesting how it carries from the tropical season right on through into winter season.
Yeah, I actually had a graphic that I must not have made it into here, but that actually showed plotted a high, and the reason there was a huge ridge over Texas, right, in the southwest, the North Texas, the plateau, but we were on the north side of that. We were on the east side of that ridge,
Yep.
and basically sort of in the trough all summer. So we had these setups where we had dry air aloft, but there was enough to get these little ridge riders and these storms that came through Alabama. I saw them constantly, but that northerly flow went all the way into the Gulf, and anything that would develop there, it would have been sheared off. And you kind of saw that with Barry, but we were just in this weird setup, and I'm glad that we aligned in that, because I was like, am I seeing something here? Maybe. It's fascinating to me how these things can line up and drastically change a season. I went back to the 90s, and this is the only other season that kind of lined up with us. It was 2019, and it was a very similar initialization. It was supposed to be an average season. There were no hurricane landfalls in the U.S. That's the last time, in that span where we had no landfalls. And if you look at the ACE numbers, they're very close, which I thought was interesting, although it's kind of a coincidence. But, no U.S. hurricane landfalls. So those are the 2 years.
So much wind shear in the Gulf all the way through the season. It was just the shear anomaly was tremendous. And it's amazing to me how you can have a year like what we just had, and then you can have some years where you've got multiple Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 storms in the Gulf. It just varies so much. And the Gulf is its own animal. It doesn't really matter what La Nina, El Nino is doing. The Gulf is just its own thing. And there are different variables at play. It's always warm enough in the Gulf for an active season, but you look at like this year, that shear, just the shear coming in all the way through the Gulf and through the season, that really cut down on those numbers. That's a good comparison, Evan. That's a good word.
That Gulf thing that you just said, David, is something that I feel like, a lot of people just overlook or take for granted. Like, oh, the Gulf is so warm. The Gulf is so like it's literally always warm.
Always
like just because the Gulf is warm doesn't mean a hurricane just going to sprout out of nowhere.
Right.
And then like there's an F5 hurricane just coming. Like that's not how this works at all. Like the water is always warm.
F5.
There are so many other things that are involved in making a hurricane than just the water being warm. That's why we have hurricane season, because the water is warm.
Yeah.
And I tell people too, there's a reason we can hit, 78 to 80 degrees any day of the year, and it's the water over the Gulf. We have persistent southerly flow, and boom, there it is. We take the water that's a few meters above that surface, and you bring it into the southeast. Simple as that. It's why we can have severe weather in November, December, January, February. So it's a silly argument, one that I've come across. Oh yeah, even our news director. Hey, have you seen the Gulf temp? Yes, I have. Okay, I love buoys. Maybe you talk to David about that. I know the Gulf temperatures.
Yes, that's he. I bet your whole building knows you love the buoys, right?
A little bit. I pull up stuff like, what are you looking at that for? I said, yeah, there's reason to it.
There's reason to it.
Just don't worry about it.
I was actually
buoy number.
I was looking at the buoys yesterday out there in the Caribbean, and there are some that are 81, 82 degrees even now out there in the Caribbean. Nice and warm, but it's always warm down there. It never really cools off. And on that note, Melissa, I posted some stuff. The depth of the 80-degree isotherm was roughly, hundreds of feet deep. You could go down 800 feet in the Caribbean, and it was still like 77 degrees, something crazy. Like there was so much warm, deep water in the Caribbean that it didn't matter about upwelling because you're upwelling 87-degree water. So with Melissa, you just knew once that started to roll, and with those upper level winds being perfect, like there's no way it doesn't become a Cat 5. There's just no way, because it's not going to upwell anything but warm water. It's just at that point, it's all about the upper level winds, and is the exhaust good enough to keep that engine running and strengthen, the RPMs basically, and it was.
Wow, good, yeah, good analysis. Because a lot of times these storms, especially when they go very near stationary,
Right.
like Melissa did, they'll run out of that energy in the exhaust, like you said. You'll see that the eye won't be as clear. It won't be as symmetrical of a storm. But man,
It was
70-some
incredible.
degrees.
Fun. That image is unbelievable. So warm, so hundreds of feet down, and you're not upwelling. You're not, that you're talking about the lowest, 100 feet below the surface, for the upwelling, really. But yeah, that water.
Hurricane hunters, did you take a flight this year?
I've never taken a flight before.
Some inside info.
They want to come fly through a area of low pressure, here in the Midwest, like they're doing off the West Coast. I'll hop on the plane with them. So that seems like a much smoother flight than going through a hurricane.
Probably.
We went to Biloxi back in August for a little trip, did some live shots from Keesler with the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. And that was pretty cool. And I told Ryan Rickert, who's a meteorologist with them, I'm like, come on, get me on board. If you have a chance to bring media, I'm ready to go.
I've asked Span to reach out to his contacts. Said, hey, if they need a dummy to put on board, I'll be the dummy.
And I've heard of so many people just getting on flights with them. It makes it seem like it's actually really easy just to get on board the Hurricane Hunters. But maybe I'm just not seeing the sheer amount of requests that they get and reject.
No, maybe. I'd be a great sample size. I think I want to do it, and then when I need new pants halfway up there,
You're strapped in, so yeah, you're in those pants.
Like I press the button to drop the radio song, or the drop song. That's all I want to do. Like I did something to help.
Yeah.
So cool. This was fun. We talked about like all realms of this, and finally got to the tropics. I think, like you put it well, David. Like anything, you have to be able to look at a lot of things, a conglomerate of data. Put it together.
Yeah.
And tropics was like that when we're forecasting the tracks. This year was a little more telling with that high there and the overall steering pattern, like you said. And then, Wes, if you happen to be a winter weather whisperer, I could use it here because a lot of people are clearing out Walmarts. It's never good.
You want nothing? You just want rain?
Yeah, cold rain. I don't want that. I think that sucks, but it's definitely better than ice.
Yeah. Keep the ice.
Everybody's getting the hand warmers and the candles and the generators.
When people are fighting for things on shelves and Wally is not good.
Grocery stores and home improvement stores are making bank this week. I mean, they're seeing their inventory fly out the door.
And then the second it doesn't happen, well, not because of me, but because of my boss. This is the most followed weather station for weather on the market by a mile. They'll be mad at us if it doesn't pan out. So
we're all grouped together. Isn't that funny?
No, they just those on-air people should have followed Snowbird.
Yeah, Snowbird Bob's never wrong, man. He has AI credit graphics are never wrong.
Golly, take a start on him. That's for another time.
That's
another
a whole
episode, another therapy session.
Yeah.
So, thanks for joining us, David. Thanks for
Yep.
sharing that winter stuff. That was really cool. And I love getting all of us together. This is fun. Wish we had more time to do it.
And good luck for you guys. I mean, both you guys dealing with the snow, Wes, and Evan, whatever's coming your way, probably a little bit of everything, but hopefully rain. Hopefully mostly rain.
Hope
Ideally.
so. Worst would be to sell out on rain and then have it come back to ice, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I need about another 18 inches this season for my seasonal snowfall forecast to hit. So I'm hoping we get about a foot because I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot after this one. The way it's been going this season here.
All right. Well, we'll be thinking of you, sir. So sorry that messes up your numbers.
Stay safe.
All right. See y'all.
See y'all.